it's really fun to play music, and I typically like to play modern day songs. Like I find some songs on the internet, find the notes, and I just like to play it whenever I'm not doing something else.
You know, a society that has to value art and music, that's the soul of any society.
When I saw the piano, I was like, yes, I want that so much.
A lot of kids that would even drop out, you know, or not even stay in school when they're given, you know, a music program. It not only, you know, gives them self-esteem, but it gets them interested in school. You know, there's
My daughter can do anything. You know, if she wanted to be something else, that's fine. But then she can also, you know, play an instrument and well. So
I think what it does is it shows kids, even today's kids, that there are options out there.
I would say I didn't decide. It called me. That was what I meant to be, so I cannot tell you I decided. It was just what was meant.
My name is Laura Dreyer, and I'm a professional musician and music teacher. I can't remember a time when I wasn't deeply attracted to music. Although I didn't grow up in a family of musicians, both my parents liked music a lot and were very supportive of my interest in music and art. My parents signed me up for piano lessons at the age of 6, and I soon discovered that I could learn and remember songs very easily. At the time I attended public school in the San Francisco Bay Area, music programs were well funded. I joined the school instrumental music program when I was 9 years old and began learning the flute, and later I switched to the saxophone. Throughout my school years, playing music helped me to cope with all of the craziness and insecurity of adolescence. Playing in the band program at school helped me to feel connected to a community of like-minded students that permeated race, economic class, and gender. Eventually, my connection to music led me to pursue it as a career. I was absolutely certain that this is what I wanted to do as my life's work. In the 1980s and 90s, budgets for art and music education were slashed in many public schools in the United States, and a cultural trend began to emerge that resulted in a way of thinking that seemed to put arts on the back burner. In 2001, the No Child Left Behind Act was instigated in public education. This put the focus of public education on students needing to pass standardized tests in order for schools to receive funding, and resulted in narrowing curriculums to what was termed core subjects. In spite of the odds stacked against access to music education, people's love and passion for music has shown through. I decided to do an investigation into what drives people to teach, perform, and study music. I interviewed students, educators, and performers, and these are their stories. Drummer and music educator Paul Yanamura, who grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, explains how different things were when he was a student in the 1960s.
It was very different in the 60s. Berkeley High had an amazing performing arts program in the 1960s. You had a full-blown drama theater arts program. Then they had, I think, 4 orchestras. If I remember correctly, you know, they had several levels of orchestra, and then they had several levels of band. The radio was very open. You had underground FM radio, and that's where I first heard Miles Davis' Bitches Brew, along with all the newest releases that weren't hitting the top 40. And I remember that also Bill Graham at the Fillmore would book jazz artists in with known rock artists and introduce people to different things. And you know something, the audiences loved them. It's really sad because we're narrowing our focus to a certain group of artists. And you see the Grammys now don't even have jazz on board in any performing factor whatsoever. You don't see live performers on TV all that much, except maybe on the late night talk shows every now and then. Whereas when I was growing up, you'd see every variety show had an orchestra.
One of the main reasons that kids today are exposed to music is because they have supportive parents or family members who are interested in the arts and arts education. Crystal Johnson-Smith is one of these people. Her daughter, Maxine, who is a talented flutist and saxophonist, has been my student for several years.
well, when a child wants to do something and has an interest, a real, genuine interest in, like music, you don't want to pop or bubble. You want to support that and nurture it and see how far she can go with it. I've always loved the arts, and I've always been a big supporter of the arts. All arts. Anything that involves creativity. I think that much like English, where you're learning to construct a report, a beginning, a middle, an end, it's kind of the same when you're taking music and you're constructing a song, and it makes you think in a different sort of way. Everything is important, especially in the arts. I think that her interest in it gave her like a higher, higher average in school. It bumped up her average, and she's doing very well. And it's also like an outlet. When you're playing an instrument, it's a certain outlet, especially when you have to think about so many other things.
Maxine Smith is one of the students who's lucky enough to have the opportunity to attend a public performing arts high school in the Bronx in New York City. She explained to me just how she became interested in playing a musical instrument.
Well, when I was in the 3rd grade, there was a program that we had to, I don't think we had much of a choice in that matter, but I really liked it because we had to play the recorder. So when we were performing, I honestly liked the melody of the song, and I'm thinking, oh, this is a beautiful instrument. And I remember thinking that if the recorder sounds nice, I thought maybe the flute would sound pretty cool too. So I wanted to play the flute because I like pretty much the beautiful angelic sound of the flute. It was like different arts programs, and I was in the band, and the band was actually really big, and there was an orchestra like right next door, and they were really big, but sometimes we collaborated with them. Like we did a symphony orchestra with I think a couple of flutes. I was in it, clarinets, and I think maybe a saxophone, I forget. But we performed like in a concert, winter concert and spring concert on a big stage, and there was like a lot of us, and it sounded really good, and it was like really fun because like there was like a whole really strong sound when it was supposed to be, and like a really soft sound when it was supposed to be, and we all like worked together. I want to major in music. I want to study music in college. I want to still play music. I don't want to stop like forever. Even if I don't end up doing music for like the rest of my life, I still want to end up, being able to play various instruments at like any given point in time, like when I want to.
Ginger Asen also attends a public school with a strong music program. She's been studying piano with me at Church Street School for Music and Art in Tribeca for several years. She comes from a musical family that also values music and art.
I started playing piano on my own when I was 6 with my dad, but we thought to start off we were going to do some lessons after school, at my own school. So I learned the basics, a few songs with a nice teacher. It was just great, it was friendly, but then as I learned a few more songs, I wanted to even go more, so then I switched to another music lesson place where I did private lessons, and I progressed a lot.
She explained to me why she loves music and what music has given her.
I love music because it expresses the way I feel about like sounds, and I love that I can kind of enjoy hearing it. It's not just playing it that I love, but it's just so satisfying when you finish a song and you're like, I can do this. It motivates you, and it's something that you're skilled at, and that you can, that it's not something that you have to be perfect at to enjoy. I love going to music lessons because you don't have to think about anything else. You gotta think about the music, and the music right now is like the spotlight. That's why I love how music just helps you in that way. And when I'm frustrating, I don't have to think about those frustrating things. When I'm playing music, I'm thinking about the notes, I'm thinking about the melody, and that kind of falls back, and it's not as important when you're playing music, because music is important on its own, and you don't have to be thinking about any stressful thing while you're playing music. I think there's different ways of expressing, but music is one of them, and there should always be an option of music if you need that, because some more than others need music, and some people need art, or whatever it is, whatever type of thing that you need to express. Music is a very big one of them. I know a lot of people actually that don't feel like they can express themselves with some subjects that we have today. So at least we should have one thing that we can just come to when we're frustrated, or we want to relax, or we want to like get out that feeling that we have. And sometimes you can't do it with math or science or literature.
John Watts is also a music teacher and pianist. Although he was encouraged to play music, his parents had other expectations for him.
It was very difficult because when I was a kid, I was groomed to go into the family business by my father and by my grandfather. So my grandfather would always ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I would always have to say I wanted to work for his company, right? And then around the time I was 12 or 13 or 14, I was really getting into music, and it was very difficult.
As a teacher, he offered this observation.
So I think it's a super healthy thing for people to do in terms of their personality, in terms of their psychology, in terms of their mental well-being. That you never lose that desire to make music. You know, I remember as a kid I was very impressed by how all the adults in my life seemed to really either regret that they quit or just how much they valued what I could do. I think the greatest thing it can really offer is attention, and the fact that you have to listen. So if you have attention and if you can listen, you can learn anything.
Kids often have to make a choice between the arts and sports. John makes this observation about the long-term influence of music as compared to sports.
You know, athletics, is great, but this excessive idea that competition is what it's all about leads to people making choices that in the end make them do things that really, people should really think about. Then truthfully, the greatest artists, when they live a long life, just keep getting better and better and better. So, there's just socially, what does it do? Art is about cooperation, right? Every single art, you have to work together. It's not that sometimes you don't want to do a little better than somebody else, but it's not the main motivation. It's not that you have to beat somebody in order to validate yourself. You can be yourself in the arts. In fact, that's what the arts promote. It promotes the idea that you can be yourself, be different, truly be different. You can't be that different in athletics in a certain sense.
Deborah Watts is a vocalist and composer who grew up in Brazil. She didn't come from a musical family and originally pursued a career as a pharmacist. Later in life, she made a change and began to follow her dream of a career in music.
The interesting thing is I had this, in my culture, we art is also called trickster's way of children to play. So if you say somebody's arteiro, means like he's a trickster, he plays all the time. So art, it was not, when I was born, was not a very serious thing in my country, so I always did on the side. I like to sing, I took ballet lessons, but it was nothing that I would take it seriously, because it was playing. Art was something that you play with.
Deborah explains why she decided to switch careers.
I felt in my heart. I was not enjoying work as a pharmacist here. It was not creative. It was very boring working at the chain store, and I tried hospitals. I tried so many things, and I was very miserable. And in music, I was so happy. There was so many possibilities. So it was just a matter of question of when.
Deborah, like so many musicians, has a very emotional reason for pursuing music as a career, and she explains how she channels her creative voice.
I get out of my way. With music, music allows me to be out of my way. So, so that's basically it. It allows me for a certain freedom of a way to go deep into myself if I follow the music. Otherwise it's about me and my words and my singing in tune, is if everybody liking it. But after you pass by all that, there's that moment that is you follow the music, and then it's no longer about you, it's about the music. and that's a very powerful thing. I hear a melody sometimes if I'm cooking, or I would say probably for me, I'm not so in touch with my feelings. Sometimes things happen and I don't know I'm upset. I'm too busy doing things. But then I hear this song that keeps repeating, and then I start whistling, and eventually there's a whole song. So I record it, and I put words on the melody. Or sometimes I like to write a lot, my personal struggles, and sometimes it's so interesting it starts coming as a poem, and then I'll try to have the melody matching the lyric. I would compare to what happened to some people when they fall madly in love with someone. Then they make those crazy choices of leaving everything behind and believing in the future of that person. I would say in art it's the same. You fall in love with, you don't know why, and you know there's no money in the world that can make you stay where you are and not fall in that love. Not only music but art itself. I think I would go backwards a little bit. I think our problem in society nowadays is lack of love. I would say it's lack of love towards ourselves. So if you don't love yourself, you don't love the other. And art helps you. Music helps you to get in touch with yourself, to express your feelings, I would even go as far as say to love yourself.
Max Keeping was born in the UK and moved to the United States as a child. I first met him at Church Street School for Music and Art when he was around 6 years old, when he began studying piano with me. As you can see from his performance at the beginning of this documentary, his playing has come a long way.
Well, I've played around 6 instruments before, but piano has always been my number one, and now it's my passion. I want to try and get a degree in music, and I want to go to a music college. So it really brought me to something that I really want to do. Well, music is sort of like my break. So if I'm ever really stressed or something, I'll come and I'll just play the piano, and it will make me more relaxed, and it really teaches you how to make things a lot simpler. For example, the notes and the keys on the keyboard, they're so complicated, and then you look at everything else and you're like, oh, this is kind of simple compared to this. Music everyone's different in music, so you could have people that really like classical music, people that really like jazz, and even though they fit into maybe one genre, they may also have a favorite artist, and then they have a favorite song. So really, to someone, it's very personal and deep what they like in music, and it sort of makes everyone different.
Toby Wine is a guitarist and the head of the music department at Church Street School for Music and Art in Tribeca. Toby came from a musical family and was encouraged to pursue music as a young person.
My father always played guitar and piano, so there was instruments around the house, and he kind of showed me the first few little things that I learned, but quickly they saw that I was interested in studying. They got me a teacher.
As a teacher, Toby has made some observations about the effect of music on his students.
I think it creates people with more compassion. I mean, it has a way of allowing people to open up and be more emotional in a positive way, be more in touch with their own emotions and feelings, compassion for others, and allows for creative thinking and a more creative society. I knew that I was always somebody who wanted to do creative, artistic kind of stuff. I was never a sports kid, so when I was a little kid, I was always drawing or writing or tinkering. Even when I could barely play the piano or stand to practice the piano, I wanted to compose music, and so it's always been a creative outlet for me. It's given me a great so many things to my life in terms of discipline, in terms of this creative outlet, opening up myself emotionally. I think that's something that people don't understand until they get heavily involved into music. And it took me a while to recognize that in order to play music successfully and beautifully, you have to be in touch with your emotions and be open and available to understand other people's emotions.
Paul Yanamura sums up the importance of music education in this compelling story.
But there was a young man that I saved in beginning band who everybody had written off in school. So maybe this is the biggest thing about music being something good. He had been written off. He was flunked. I didn't realize it when he came to class that he was flunking everything else in school. And he started cutting my class. The vice principal found him, brought him in, and said, "Should we put him on work detail, for a couple of weeks?" I said, "No. Call us home and tell them that he's going to be late today, but if necessary, I'll make sure he gets home too, even though I'm not supposed to do that." So, Laura, you're going to come to my class, you're going to come to my band room after school today, and I'm going to show you how to pass my class. I didn't know anything about his academics. I was a brand new teacher there at the school. And so he came in, I held out my clarinet, he held out his, and I played along with him. I explained, quarter notes, whole notes, half notes, etc., and how to finger certain things. And I told him at the end, I said, "Now, what you've done today, you've gone through all the material I've been testing everybody else on in class. So essentially, you're now passing everything. Now, you have to come to class. You come to class, you keep passing your tests. If you need help, you know when to find me because I have the same lunch period you do. Come on in. Door's always open for you. I'll pull out my clarinet, we'll play together. And you're staring at an A- at the end of this quarter, whereas you were flunking just up until now. You're going to pass, but you've got to come these last 4 weeks and the rest of the year. And you're staring at an A-, maybe an A+ by the end of the year. What do you say?" He couldn't believe it, but what I didn't realize was he had never been told that by a teacher at all. He even came up with a fingering pattern one day. He says, "Am I writing a piece of music here?" I said, "Well, let's find out." So I had my laptop, and I wrote it down for him on my notation program. "Hooray, you've written 8 bars. This is good. We should play with beginning band. Let me transpose it for everybody." And so we played that piece at the end of the year concert. I didn't realize it, but the people who I thought were his parents, they were his group home counselors. He was in a group home. But they were just so proud of him that night. And faculty members at Parental that he thought hated him. One who even called him a thug. He was anything but a thug. He was a very gentle kid. He gets up there, and he had added some more to the piece, and I didn't have time to write it out for him. So I said, "Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to play the 8 measures we know, and you get to finish it by yourself." He got a standing ovation. I don't know how you feel about it, but I'm tired of people saying, "Well, this helps your math." I'm terrible at math. We just start enjoying music for what it really is. It gives us pleasure, it brings up emotions that nothing else can through sound.
Luckily, there seems to be a changing trend. Thanks to President Obama, the U.S. Senate passed the Every Child Achieves Act in 2015. Hopefully, music and art are now on their way to being recognized as core subjects in elementary and secondary public schools in the United States. This could mean that students in the U.S. will receive a more well-rounded education that isn't as focused on passing standardized tests, and that music, computer science, and physical education would be viewed as having equal importance to subjects like science and math. The ancient Greek culture had a very holistic approach to music, science, astronomy, philosophy, and religion, and considered them to all be connected. They believed that music could affect one's mood and temperament. Music was believed to have power to heal and restore the human body and soul to complete harmony. The ancient Greeks believed that if one of these activities was studied more dominantly than the other, it could cause a person to either become too aggressive or too passive. Ultimately, I believe that restoring this balance to our society could go a long way in healing the many issues that we face. I believe that music connects us to our souls. I believe in the power of music.